All right, today is January 18th, 2023. Okay, so where are we with this latest wrongful death lawsuit? Most of you may not know that there's another wrongful death lawsuit in the TWA 800 crash. In September of 2022, some of the families of the Flight 800 filed yet another wrongful death lawsuit. They now believe that a missile brought down the flight and not a mechanical failure. However, this time their lawsuit is against Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, the Missile Defense Agency, the Department of Defense, and the United States Navy. This most recent lawsuit hinges on the statements made by an alleged whistleblower who says that the Navy shot down Flight 800. But first, I'm going to give you a short recap for those who don't know. After the loss of TWA 800 on July 17, 1996, the National Transportation Safety Board later published their nearly 4-year investigation, where the board members claimed that a mechanical failure, a center wing tank explosion, was the cause of the crash, and not a missile. During the NTSB's investigation, the possibility that a bomb or a missile might have been responsible was looked at, but was soon dismissed. However, there were many who continued to suggest that missiles were involved. So the safety board, the FBI, and the CIA responded by calling such persons conspiracy kooks, as the board responded by saying there is no evidence of a missile. So having accepted the safety board's aircraft accident report for mechanical failure, families filed legal action. During their first wrongful death lawsuit, families sued TWA and Boeing for monetary damages because they accepted the safety board's final report that a design flaw leading to a center tank explosion caused the crash. And by suing TWA and Boeing, they understood the conditions of their settlement. However, recently, some family members have changed their minds and no longer believe the NTSB report. They now believe that a missile brought the flight down. So why the change of mind, and where does this now leave the NTSB? So this latest lawsuit has taken on legs, however, only because of an alleged whistleblower statements who, finally having come forward on the internet, said the Navy did it. This whistleblower is a former sailor named William H. Teal III. He posted his statement on YouTube claiming that during an exercise off the coast of Long Island that, quote, USS Lady Gulf shot down TWA 800. This was Teal's reply to several questions that I had asked him. Since Teal's YouTube video, he has appeared on the Stu Peters Show and the Duke Report, where he has given his story that during a new systems testing, the 2 missiles were fired at a towed target, apparently missing the towed target and changing course and reacquired the transponder code of Flight 800. Teal's story is full of holes and inconsistencies. So the first problem is, Teal told me on YouTube that he was not aware if a P-3 was even involved, yet he told Jack Cashill how the P-3 played its part in the alleged exercise. Teal said that he was not certain where his ship was operating, though he was certain that his ship, USS Carr, was in an active W-105. The next problem is with the P-3. There was no P-3 involved in any exercise with either the USS Carr or the USS Lady Gulf, and certainly not a missile exercise in W-105. The P-3 from VP-26 to Tridents was out of Naval Air Station Brunswick and scheduled for a sub-X, not an alleged missile exercise. This is in public records. The P-3 heading out of Brunswick was looking for submarines, and when nearing W-105 found the area cold or non-operative. This is also public records. This exchange from the air traffic control transcript as the P-3 contacts the controller working them. This is from the NTSB Exhibit 3F, page 12. The P-3 calls and says, "Ma'am, we have the Whiskey 105 areas being cold. Is it possible to go direct to Point Berg?" Now, the area controller working them would know that W-105 was not active and that no ships had checked in, and certainly if live fire were going to be taking place. This is to keep air traffic and boaters out of the area. As well, the only government ship in the boundaries of 105 was the Coast Guard cutter ADAC. which was on fishery patrols. Had the warning area been activated and that naval ships were present there for live fire, the ADAC would have known this. Had the Navy been out there, the ADAC would have known this. So there was no P3 participating in any live fire exercises where a flotilla of naval ships were alleged to have been at 8:30 p.m. that night. The VP-26 patrol aircraft continued well to the south for its sub-acts. Now, some independent investigators claim that some radar primaries on the local radar graphs were naval vessels. However, after 25 years, and even with this lawsuit, there has not been even one record of evidence that any naval vessels were in the Long Island area, nor has any of the radar data been identified as a naval vessel. Teal claimed that an aircraft towing a target on a 1,000-foot wire was in the mix. However, we have no air traffic control records of such an aircraft which would have been participating in any missile exercise related to W-105. For the exercise, Teal claims that his ship and the other ship identified as the Leyte Gulf had located the target, identified the target, confirmed the target, and then the Gulf fired 2 missiles. Teal claims that the target fit the profile, that the target was a low, slow flyer heading towards them. Teal said that TWA fit that profile. This would be absolutely impossible for multiple reasons. The target would have to be in W-105. TWA was not. The target would be, as Teal said, coming right at them. TWA was not coming right at them. Teal said that the target was a low, slow flyer. TWA was not. TWA was 25 plus nautical miles away, which put her at about 8 nautical miles off the coast of Long Island. TWA was climbing to 15,000 feet, heading east by east-northeast and at 448 miles per hour. None of this fits a drill for a low, slow flyer heading towards them. The next problem is that we have never heard from the alleged crew of the aircraft, which was to be towing a target on a 1,000-foot line. After 25 years, the identity of this aircraft and the crew has never been identified. The next problem is that after the 2 missiles were fired and having lost their lock on this towed target, the car in the Gulf would have to know this. Yet, according to Teal's statement, they were not even aware of where the missiles were, not until after the 747 went down. They were apparently not aware that the missiles lost track, changed course, apparently required a totally new target, which would have been the transponder code of TWA. It would be a moment or so after the alleged missile hits from the Gulf where someone says, "We hit an Airbus." Teal asks, "What's an Airbus?" Where the reply was, "A commercial plane." Now, the response to this was, as Teal went on, that they just continued as if nothing occurred and held some other drills on board, but were soon told to collect all the logbooks and the tapes and then take them to be destroyed with salt water and a shredder. However, in another account, Teal says that after they ran to Bermuda with the Gulf, that after arriving, officials came and collected the logbooks and the tapes so that there would be no record that they were there. So, were the logbooks destroyed or turned over to officials in Bermuda? After there was radio chatter about a 747 crash, the commanding officer of the P3, Lieutenant Ott, immediately turned the plane around and called air traffic control for directions back to the crash site and asked if there was anything they could do. And when the P3 arrived at the crash site, they videotaped the crash site for some time and then were told that they could continue down south. So no, the Navy did not run. Also, had the car in the Gulf been out there, the P3 would know this and would have called them to assist. As well, the ADAC was the only government ship out there that responded when the FAA gave them coordinates to the crash site. Had the Navy been out there, the Coast Guard would have made calls to them. Neither the P3 nor the Coast Guard made any calls. Why not? Because the Navy was not out there. Now, with all of the commercial flights transiting the airspace, as well as private boats, private pilots, fishing boats, trawlers, and other commercial ships, not a one reported seeing a flotilla of naval vessels in the area in 105 at 8:30 p.m. Certainly ship's radar would have identified so many ships. Now, as a part of my research, I obtained some congressional records regarding the question of naval activity that evening by way of the Secretary of Defense in a reply to a congressional request for a list of Navy vessels that were operating at the time. Then Department of Defense General Counsel Judith A. Miller, along with Navy Information Officer Jack D. Punches, provided not only a list of operational ships, but a map showing their locations. The Car and the Gulf were not on that list, nor were any ships shown to be inside the 105 boundaries, even if in the area and transiting a non-active area. Now, I recently sent over 50 pages of information and copies of to the current DoD General Counsel, Catherine D. Cross, informing her of those congressional records requested about naval operations on 17 July 1996. I provided those and other bona fides in defense of the Navy, opposing those accusations. However, where the plaintiffs in this latest wrongful death lawsuit have filed or have failed in as far as due diligence to include the only principles in this case for Navy missiles, and that the only principles in this case must include the USS Leyte Gulf and the testimony of William H. Teal III, on which this case can only stand. Thomas Stalcup is not an exclusive to those records listed in the body of the amended complaint. I have those records regarding the Aegis program and testing. Once again, those missiles where the plaintiff can only have knowledge of and any basis for this latest lawsuit can only hinge on the statements made by Mr. Teal. The source of those errant missiles have come as coming from the USS Leyte Gulf. However, the Department of Defense and Department of the Navy provided to Congress those logs which do not include the Car nor the Gulf as operational nor within 105, as I have demonstrated. This case can go in one of two directions. Either the DoD and the DON are now going to throw the Navy under the bus in order to obscure the actual source of those missiles, which did take down the flight, or the DoD will now have to provide bona fides as to the sources of those missiles. This is what I have determined by reviewing the Aegis program documents for research and testing, and then unwittingly what records Captain Ray Laird's case disclosed by way of a response to the NSA and the CIA during records requests from that agency during Ray Laird's most successful case against the Safety Board. In that case, where the evidence provided by Laird's experts, as well as the Safety Board's inability to provide records in support of their center tank explosion, did well to impeach the NTSB, where the judge would agree with Laird and fine for NTSB fraud. Now, during Lair's litigation, the NSA made a statement that it and the CIA wish they could take back. However, you can't unring that bell. In short, the NSA admitted as much that they were tracking TWA, and ironically with a system that is used for foreign weapons testings. Stay tuned. Earn out.